Hello, class. Want to spend some time talking about return on investment now that you have posted your answers to the discussion board. I want to give you some things that I want you to pick up from this little exercise. So you have listed your investments from the least risky to the most risky. And for the most part, we have in the low risk category savings accounts, certificates of deposits, government bonds, which have low risk, meaning the likelihood of you having a different outcome than you expected is low, because if things go poorly for wherever you have that money, especially a bank, there is government insurance that will step in and use taxpayer money to repay you. I want you to remember that when you put money in a bank, CD, savings account, you are loaning the bank money. And so when you take it out, they're repaying you. And so if it's like any loan, if they can't repay you, then in this case, FDIC will step in and repay you. It will take some time, but you will get your money. Same government backs, of course, government bonds, and so forth. Now, a little bit about some of the terms some of you used in your list of investments. First of all, an IRA or a 401k is not in and of itself an investment. It is a way to invest. It is not an investment. So once you have an IRA or a 401k established, then you choose with the money in that account what investments to make. So then you would decide whether to make an investment in government bonds or into stocks or so forth. Now, the term bonds is one that we hear a lot, but some people aren't sure about that. Bonds is simply a way of borrowing money. When we say government bonds, we're referring to the government borrowing money from individuals or institutions in order to run the government, which they don't seem to be able to do without borrowing money. And then, of course, the key is which government you're talking about. So, government of the United States is obviously a little less risky to loan to than the government of Russia or the government of Greece or some other places, or even the government of Lancaster County, because Lancaster County has less resources in terms of taxation and such than does the U.S. government, the entire federal government. And there have been counties and cities, you've probably heard of Detroit, that have declared bankruptcy and not been able to pay back their bonds, so they have a little higher risk. Now, at the high risk end, you should have we see things like stocks and starting your own business. Mutual funds, as some mentioned, is a little less risky because you diversify. Commodities and gold, silver, those types of things are investments to a point, but sometimes we don't consider some would say they're not investments because they do not pay any current income or any other way. They just bounce up and down. But we'll certainly do that, and they certainly are high risk. But we want to focus on the idea of stocks and starting your own business as being the high risk types of investments in our case. And I want you to understand a little bit about risk and how we work with that. You can't avoid risk. There's no way to get around it. Even low risk savings accounts have a risk, and that is that you will not make enough money to cover inflation, and that you'll actually be losing money as far as what you can buy with your money over time. So there's always a risk. What we do is manage risk. Each of us faces risk every day, whether it be driving or that type of thing. And so we weigh the risk. We manage the risk of driving by obeying traffic laws and stopping at stop signs. And I want you to imagine just how risky it would be to drive if no one followed the rules. If everybody was driving whatever side of the road they wanted to, stopped when they wanted to, rather than when it was required by the rules. So information and rules help us manage risk. Information about what the rules are and what we need to do. One of the ways we use that information is we look at the past in order to predict the future. So with investing in stock, we could look at what past performance of that particular company was in order to help us predict the future. It's not a perfect predictor, but it's a good indication that they are going to be able to do the same thing in the future. And that would help us manage our risk. We could choose how much risk we were willing to take in our investments based on what the past ups and downs and performance was. And when we choose, we would be able to use that information to manage how much risk we were going to take. Same thing with starting our own business, although that's, some people would say, more risky because there is no past. However, you could look at similar businesses or consider other types of things to manage your risk, and certainly investigate the type of business you wanted to start to be able to identify what information you can get about that type of business and how it makes its money and profits and that type of thing, in order to, again, use information to manage your risk. Now, that information and the things that come from it are based on rules, accounting rules for financial information, traffic rules for driving, things like that. And if you don't have rules and everybody does it whatever they want, then you can't really count on the information and you can't manage your risk. And what happens when that's the case is people just avoid risk by investing in low risk things like savings accounts and CDs, and literally don't make any money and don't help the economy grow because businesses aren't created and jobs aren't created, people aren't hired, and we're all in the middle of it. As accountants, we are part of that process of allocating people's resources to the best companies because they provide information, accounting information for people to make decisions. If people aren't following the rules for driving, you stay home. You just say, okay, if everybody's going to drive on whatever side of the road they want this day, I'm going to stay home and catch up on my binge watching of some television show. If in accounting you don't trust the information you're getting, or in the investment world, you just stay in the savings accounts and or stash your money in a mattress, although I find that that's not really low risk because it really makes it hard to sleep at night. So that's how we want to work with our risk versus return and how we deal with ROI. Continuing on to your calculations of which investor did the best. If you look at here, we have calculations for each investor, A, B, and C. And investor A took 4,500 divided by 50,000, what they made compared to what they invested, because the two things you need to make sure you understand is how much was invested. You get 9%. Investor B, we do the same thing, except we multiply by 2. Now, why is that? Because investor A had a whole year to make money and investor B only had 6 months. So to put them on equal footing, we have to multiply investor B's by 2, or we could have gone the other way and taken investor A and divided by 2 and gotten a same time period. You can't compare a year with 6 months. And the same with the last investor who only had, we'd multiply by 4, so it would be a year. So when you do that, you find out investor C was had the highest percentage. So what do I want you to remember from that? You need to make sure that whenever you're looking at return, on how much money a company made or a person made, you need to know what time period they made that. Is that a month? Is that a year? Is that a quarter? And then if you're going to compare two, you have to make sure that you do something, some adjustment to the time period to make them both the same. Okay, so you compare how much return is made to how much is invested. That how much they have to work with is equally as important as what the time period is. So our formula that I want you to remember is, and get from this little exercise, is net income divided by total assets is the way we calculate return on investment for a company, for a business. It is always stated as a percentage, and that allows us to compare to other firms as long as we know that they are on the same time period and so forth. But once you convert it to a percentage, you do not have to worry about one company being big or small or medium or whatever. They can be compared. And you can compare the same company to itself by comparing what their return was last year to this year, and so forth. So to show you how this is done, here is, all right, Krispy Kreme is given here, and we have our how much revenue they earn, but the number we're worried about that they have actually after expenses is net income is 20, and this is in thousands, that's $20 million for the year ended February 3rd, 2013. For the year before, they, as you can see, had net income of 166,269. So you find the net income on the income statement for the company given for the year, and then you divide that by the total assets. So you would divide the 20,779 or 20,779,000 by the 341,938 to get a percentage that would calculate return on investment. So that is how you calculate return on investment to get you a feel for how successful a company is about using their assets, using their resources that they own and control, invested in order to make money for shareholders, for the owners of the business.